Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and today we're going to talk about time gating, something that got a lot of airtime back in the day in some previous WoW expansions, and has recently resurfaced as a big community discussion point with the release or re-release of Horrific Visions. I went on a little time gating rant in my Horrific Visions guide, not a big one, but basically there are a lot of things about Horrific Visions this time around that are time gated, some of which have been reverted, actually one of which has been reverted, which I would argue was the biggest one. And then a couple of which remain in the game. So the big time gates are the Helm Enchant, a power level time gate that's game-wide, right? You're less powerful in Raid until you can get the stronger Helm Enchant. Same with Mythic Plus. The Hourglass, which is a Horrific Visions specific power time gate. And the gear, or the cosmetics and stuff, which were time gated, and are now not time gated. They took the time gate away from this. This was previously gated behind filling out the Hourglass. Now, even though I went on a little bit of a rant against time gates in that video, I was mostly concerned with the cosmetics being time gated. I thought that was the most offensive of these, and I think there are actually good reasons to do time gates in different spots in the game, but they have to be done correctly, and in a lot of cases, doing them badly is a lot worse than not doing them at all, and doing them well is only a small benefit over not doing them at all. So I think it's something that Blizzard needs to be careful with, especially, releasing a feature like this and having the initial wave of players that were coming to do this realize that, like, oh, after doing this for 20 minutes, I've now done everything that I can do this week, and I can't even get any of these cool cosmetics for many more weeks. So what reasons are there that are good to timegate content? Well, the first thing that everybody kind of jumps at is this keeps people subscribed for longer. I tend to not put that much stock into that perspective of time gating, particularly when we look at something like Horrific Visions Revisited. I don't expect that there was a calculus within Blizzard that's like, yes, if we time gate these cosmetics to June the 3rd instead of May the 20th, we will collect an extra this many subs. I don't think the math actually works out on that. I think if anything, they're probably more likely if you design a really awful time gate, like the cosmetics being time gated on this thing. My suspicion is you probably lose money if you're Blizzard by doing that, because there might be people that just unsub and leave, and I don't think that there are that many people that were like, yeah, I was gonna unsub, but man, I really gotta wait an extra week to pick up the Black Dragon scale backpack, or I guess the mounts are the main ones that would maybe keep somebody subbed. Maybe somebody really wants this mount, they'll go for it. But I tend to not think that time gating is designed primarily with the goal of keeping people subbed for longer. I think that there are legitimate good gameplay reasons why time gating is sometimes a useful thing. The one that gets cited the most is saving players from themselves, which is a reasonable thing. There are a lot of places in WoW where if you give players the option to become more powerful at the expense of not having fun, we will do so, right? You can look at old implementations of Artifact Power and Heart of Azeroth, which featured some soft time gating in terms of how much AP you could get per week, and players just barreled through the soft time gates because you could, by just doing island expeditions, 16 hours a day for a week, and then bang, you get the reward that was supposed to really be something you got a month later. But even without time gates, right? If there was just no time gates at all, people would rush in, collect all of fill up their hourglass entirely in 3 hours instead of 30 minutes of getting the ones that we have right now, and then they would have a trivial Horrific Visions experience, right? You'd have 90% sanity drain instead of 60%. So the content you would literally be losing your sanity at 25% the rate that you currently are inside a Horrific Vision. You would have 4 times longer in any given zone before getting kicked out. Way, way, way easier. Now, is that inherently a good thing? I think there's a strong argument to be made that Horrific Visions are more fun if you struggle with them for a little while, right? Like if the content is quite difficult for a little bit, then that can be a good thing. And doing a 5-mask run this week, right, getting the Symphony of Mass achievement this week is legitimately quite difficult. And I think if it weren't for this time gate, very few players would actually try that difficult content that they would maybe have fun with. So I think there's, a compelling argument to be made that time gating that is nice, particularly because no power level is time gated behind it, right? No power level for outside in the game. It's not like you don't need that to get these lesser runes. You do need that if you want to unlock the heroic weaponsmith, but realistically, if you're doing this week, you don't need the heroic weaponsmith. And if you do need the heroic weaponsmith, you're not doing this week. So it kind of doesn't, there's not really power level gated behind it in any meaningful way. And there are no cosmetics gated behind it. Now, could they have gated these cosmetics behind something other than time? I think they could have. I think there are ways that you could. So the reason that they time gated this initially, I suspect, is that they didn't want players to be choosing between power and cosmetics, right? As it stands right now, you get these corrupted mementos and you have a choice between upgrading your sand hourglass or buying a cosmetic. And one thing that actually might happen this week is you might get 40,000 mementos and be like, oh yeah, I'll buy the Corruption of the Aspects mount. And then next week rolls around and like, oops, now I have to do more visions before I can upgrade my hourglass. And you actually would have been better off upgrading your hourglass first and then having an easier time grinding out the corrupted mementos, right? Like that would actually work out better for most players if you wanted to do both of those things. Now, if you only wanted the mount, of course, it's better for you if you can just rush the mount and not have to worry about upgrading your hourglass. So there are some cases where that's nice. But like if you want all the cosmetics, you might actually slow down the time that you earn the last cosmetic by buying some of them early, because that's going to prevent you from then next week immediately being able to fill out your upgrade tree as far as it is next week available. So I think that was the reason why they gated these cosmetics behind the filling out your hourglass fully initially. It makes sense in a vacuum, but then the problem is that because the hourglass has a time gate on it, then the cosmetics had a time gate on it as well. If the hourglass didn't have a time gate, then I think it would make a lot more sense to gate the rewards, the cosmetic rewards, behind a full hourglass tree, if that makes sense. And I think there are still ways they could have done this being gated. You could gate these behind different accomplishments inside Horrific Visions. I don't think that it makes sense to gate like an 8-mask run as the reward for getting a mount. There are some rewards just for the achievements for the 8-mask run, which makes sense. But you could do something like, hey, if you want this mount, you have to do a 5-mask run, something which is genuinely quite hard this week and will be quite trivial in 2 weeks' time with a fully upgraded hourglass tree. Like, I can't overstate. You'll have 4 times longer before your sanity drains. More than that, actually, because you're going to have a bigger max sanity bar, in addition to 90% instead of 60% sanity drain, in addition to a cheat death, in addition to doing 10% more damage from the singular sanitation expertise, in addition to the filling out your tributes more if you've been doing Horrific Visions. So like the content is going to get 5 times easier, something like that, between now and then. So you could maybe do something like that where you wanted to, you want to make sure that people don't buy cosmetics before they buy the power that they'll need to finish whatever part of Horrific Visions you want them to go and do. But of course, because Blizzard just did that time gate and then they panicked, took it away, now there's no gates at all behind any of this stuff, which I guess makes sense. I don't know. I guess my point with this is there are ways to do time gates that make sense, that are good, and that will enhance our gameplay, and that actually do make the game better. It's not always just a cynical cash grab, and in many ways, making the game worse is going to lose them money. Making the game better is going to make them money. More people are just going to play the game if it's better. You can look at just people doing Mythic Plus Keystones in seasons where they're good versus seasons where they're bad, right? And it's like, yeah, we're going to play the game that's like the combination of rewards and gameplay. The rewards are important. The gameplay is really important as well. As long as you land the rewards and the gameplay somewhere good, you don't need a time gate to keep people playing. And a time gate can actually grief the reward side of that so much that you'll lose people playing. But if you implement time gates, I think it's important that you implement them well. I think there's definitely still legitimate concerns that like, hey, especially with something like Horrific Visions, I'm a lot less interested in a time gate to save me from myself when the feature comes out, not just on a mid-season patch, but already weeks after the mid-season patch has come out, right? We're talking about a patch that launched in February, I think, maybe March, and then we had the 0.5 patch that dropped in April or something, and now we're having Horrific Visions during that same patch with no other additional content besides it, coming out in the middle of May. And I think when you are time gating something like this, it's important that you have more than just 20 minutes the first week. you want to give everybody enough stuff to like sink their teeth into the first week that they don't feel like, oh, this wasn't enough for me. Even if the other side of that is the risk of like, oh man, they're going to consume all 2 hours of Horrific Visions content that we've made with this patch too quickly, something like that. Like, yeah, maybe we will. Maybe that's bad, but it's better than giving us, 30 minutes and then another hour and then 30 more minutes time gated across 3 weeks. Like, that doesn't solve that problem, right? The thing that you need to worry about with time gating is if Blizzard gives us an 80-hour grind and doesn't time gate it, we are doing that grind, over 4 days with 80 cans of Mountain Dew and 20 packs of Doritos, right? So that's something where you can maybe time gate it to 10 hours per week over 8 weeks. Something like that makes a lot of sense, right? But something like, again, 2 hours is a little bit of an exaggeration. Depends on what exactly you're trying to accomplish out of Horrific Visions. But if you're just trying to do the main quest line and earn and unlock the Helm Enchants, it's a very small amount of content. If you're trying to purchase all of the cosmetics and stuff and farm a bunch of corrupted mementos, it's more than that. And again, the actual like time gating it so that there is a week of moderate difficulty, high difficulty to get the Symphony of Masks achievement, I think that has a lot of merit to it. But particularly when the cosmetics were also time gated, there was literally like, okay, 20 minutes of relevant stuff you could do this week, unless something that you cared about was getting Symphony of Masks day one or whatever, which, because you're a sweaty loser that thinks that's cool and wanted to do that, which I am, but not a lot of people are, right? Most people would look at the difficulty of Symphony of Masks week one, see that there's no rewards associated with it that they care about, and be like, okay, I'll get that next week or the week after when it's easier, and then you've committed that sin of trying to slice an already thinly sliced pizza into those like tiny little slices that they give you at the elementary school pizza parties where they get one medium pizza and they're trying to serve 22 kids, and like those things are microscopic pizza slices, right? That's what they've done with time gating until they untime gated the cosmetic rewards. Untime gating the cosmetic rewards fixed like 80% of what I was mad about with the time gating for Horrific Visions. And again, there are actual positives to it. There are positives to the raid, right? You look at the raid is time gated. I mean, gear in this game is a time gate, right? You earn gear each week, and there are weekly resets behind the gear you can earn. Hero track gear isn't time gated. You can just farm it from M+. Myth track gear is time gated because there are only weekly sources of myth track gear, right? You have to go into the mythic raid with resets on each boss or collect your items from the Great Vault over here, right? If you want mythic track gear, which means that our power level has a ceiling that advances over the course of a season. And I think that makes a lot of sense over the first 2 months, maybe 3 months of the season, that you have those sorts of time gates that are preventing us from getting too strong, because that means that the difficulty of the content, which is at a fixed / decreasing, slope, and the power level of our characters, which is increasing, there's not just us increasing that power level to full and then smashing the content, right? You instead have everybody beating content as they're earning enough gear that it is, dynamically the right difficulty for them. That is a time gate that's inherent in World of Warcraft, is the time gating of gear, and I think it's a very good time gate. Similarly, the raid has a further amplifier on that with the loyal customer buff. In addition to getting, 3% stronger each week as you're gaining more gear, you're getting 3% stronger every 3 weeks from filling out your Galagio Loyalty Rewards Club. And I think that this system has been very positive for the raid difficulty curve. Auto-nerfing the raid is great. Otherwise, they have to do it very, stochastically and arbitrarily by nerfing bosses. And sometimes they nerf bosses wrong. They nerf the wrong boss. They nerf the wrong parts of the boss. And they have to do that a lot less in a world where there is more time gating of player power. So I think time gating of player power is an inherently good thing. But I think, or not inherently good thing, is often a good thing. It's a tool that should be used with almost all features that they put into major patches. I think that time gating of most stuff in the middle of a season is less good. I think there's a lot less needs to save us from ourselves when it comes to something like the Horrific Visions patch content being added to the game. So I'm a lot more... I think that they should be a lot more willing to be like, oops, we made them too strong. Oops, we gave them everything they wanted too quick on something that comes out in the middle of a season. And just in general, I think that they should be less stingy with player power level in the middle of the season. That's a philosophical divergence that I have with Blizzard that you can see with the Dinar vendor as well, right? I think the Dinar vendor, the same thought processes that caused them to heavily time gate their Perfect Vision system cause them to make it so that it's hard to get the good items from the Dinar vendor, right? You have to actually kill Mugsy and Gallywix on Mythic if you want to get their loot from this vendor on Mythic, even in the middle of the season on a thing that came out in the middle of the season, right? When the turbo, actually, again, not even on the patch, but later than the patch, when this turbo boost came out. So yeah, I guess that is sort of the fundamental underlying philosophical disagreement I would say I have with Blizzard's recent design, is that I think they should be less stingy with power level and time gating and stuff for mid-season content. I think that mid-season should be more time of giving players that are actually committed and playing the game. And, again, it doesn't have to be free, but like AOTC raiders, right? People that want to do a couple hours of Horrific Visions, giving them access to the greater enchant on the first week, giving them access to grinding out and buying these cosmetics on the first week, instead of, having a completely read out, inaccessible vendor here with nothing that you can purchase on the first week. That is, I think, the main disagreement I have. But I don't think time gating as a whole is a bad thing. I'm reminded of borrowed power. Gear in World of Warcraft is both borrowed power and time gating, two phrases that are used to attack Blizzard on new designs but those aren't inherently bad. Time gating isn't inherently bad. Bad time gating is bad. Time gating all the cosmetics on this vendor was bad time gating, right? Borrowed power isn't inherently bad. Tier set bonuses are borrowed power, right? This is borrowed power. The Helm enchant, it's literally going away at the end of the season. Those, putting cool things in the game, if they keep doing that, if we just have 20 years worth of, systems all piled on top of each other, that's obviously not feasible. So some of it has to be temporary. And that's what borrowed power is, right? So time gating, borrowed power are not bad in a vacuum, but there are bad implementations of them. And Horrific Visions definitely showcased that with the cosmetics being time gated in particular. And I think they probably could have done better with how they, the cadence of the release of the rest of the stuff, the time getting the rest of the stuff, but I have a lot less problems with that. I think that, again, the biggest one was the time gating on this vendor. I'm curious what you think, though. Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.